Hey guys, welcome to the weekly roundup where we go over all the latest news from Australia and overseas ahead of the weekend, of course. And just a little bit of a recap on last weekend. Joseph Goodle came up short against Effie Jagar. He was stopped in 4 rounds in Lake Tahoe, Nevada. Goodle dropped to 10-2-1. Jagar improved to 19-1. Not quite sure what's ahead for Joseph Goodle. In the meantime, looks like he will probably head back to Australia, and there are some good big fights for him here if he wanted them. Of course, Lucas Big Daddy Brown, Joseph Parker, maybe Dempsey McKean. So all's not lost for Joseph Goodle. Credit to him for taking the big fight over there, and as I said, came up short, but still some options for him going forward. As for Jagar, has been mentioned that he might be in line for some of the big fights against some of the best heavyweights in the world, like the Zangs and Joshuas and maybe Ruizes or Wilders or one of these types of guys. So that win, even though Joseph Goodle wasn't probably on the cusp of any big things in the States, still a good win by Jagar. And as I said, he will get some big opportunities down the track. Speaking of down the track, looking at March 2024, could we be in for a Zooo double header? Now, we have talked on here before about the possibility of Tim Zooo headlining a show in Las Vegas in early March to coincide with the NRL season kickoff at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. NRL, I mean the National Rugby League, if you're not from New South Wales, Queensland, or maybe you're overseas. It's the National Rugby League, and so they open the season, or their season, on March the 2nd, which is March the 3rd here in Australia, and there is talks or negotiations going on at the moment that Tim Zooo would obviously be the headline defending his WBO 154-pound title, but Nikita Zooo could be on the card, Liam Wilson, Sam Goodman, among other fighters. They are talking about an Australia versus USA concept, maybe at the T-Mobile Arena, although I'm not quite sure the event might be big enough for that, but there are plenty of other stadiums in Las Vegas that could hold this card. Now, the fight card would take place on Friday, March the 1st, which will be March the 2nd, the Saturday here in Australia. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. There has been a lot of talk about it. So if they can get it over the line, it's one thing to say they're going to do it, but of course they have to get an opponent for Tim Zooo that's going to be ready on that date. So we'll stay tuned after Christmas, I suppose. On to this weekend. Big show for Ace Boxing. Now, there's 8 fights at the Southport Sharks Football Club, headlined by Luke Medini, 10-0 with 8 knockouts. He's going to take on Benoit Huber from Switzerland, who's 9-3 with 6 knockouts over 8 rounds in the cruiserweight division. Also on that card, Bryce McLaughlin, Nathan Wilson will fight over 10 rounds for the Australian middleweight title. And Nasilia Costello will fight Sarah Watt over 8 rounds for the Australian super flyweight title. Also on that card, hot prospect Jalen Tate. So catch it live and free on YouTube from 6 p.m. this Saturday night. Make sure you go to the Ace Boxing TV page. There's a lot of fake sites out there for the official telecast, Ace Boxing TV on YouTube from 6 p.m. Alex Winwood will be back in December the 1st to be exact. He's 3-0. He's going to come up against Filipino Chris Ganoza from the Philippines, who's 20-5. It's at the Metro City nightclub in Perth. At the moment, Alex Winwood, WBC number 2, IBF number 5, WBA number 13. And strange as it might sound, with only 3 fights under his belt, they are talking world titles for him in 2024. So all the best to Alex Winwood, who is a great young guy. I know I speak about this every week, but Michael Zarafa, we still have no idea what's going on there. Apparently he's going to be on the December 9 card in the States on the undercard of Erislandy Lara and Danny Garcia, who will fight for the WBA middleweight title. There was going to be Keith Thurman, Amantas Staniosis for the WBA version of, or one of the versions of the welterweight title. That fight apparently is off, but at this stage they're still saying Lara Garcia with Zarafa on the undercard. I'm still to be convinced it's going to happen, but who knows, considering we are less than 5 weeks away. So something has to happen, I would think, in the next week. I can't find any news anywhere of this card being confirmed. But we'll keep our eyes peeled and see what happens there. One last thing on the Aussie scene, really good news. Shotgun Shannon O'Connell is to return to the ring. She had major issues in the last few years with her shoulder, couldn't really jab or do all the things she really wanted to in camp. Apparently, she's had the partial shoulder reconstruction now, and they're saying it is better than ever. I did see some footage of her online doing a workout in the gym, and she looks $1 million. So looking to return in 2024. Of course, she hasn't fought for about a year since she was stopped by Ebony Bridges in that IBF bantamweight title fight in England. But she will return, as I said, in 2024 with a 23-7-1 record. Looks like she's still got plenty of petrol in the tank. So all the best to Shotgun Shannon O'Connell as she teams up again with Glenn Jennings as they strive for a world title fight, hopefully next year. On to the world scene, and big news today as of this recording. The IBF have stripped Terence Crawford of the IBF welterweight title and awarded it to Jaron Boots Ennis. Now, I just find it fascinating that it's not even 4 months since Terence Crawford won that belt over Errol Spence. There has been no talk yet about confirmation of his rematch with Errol Spence. Of course, it will happen, just no timeline or official date or location locked in yet. So I find it fascinating that within 4 months they have stripped Terence Crawford. Normally, you have to be out of action for at least 12 to 18 months before they'll strip you. Now, I'm not sure whether Terence Crawford has informed the IBF that he doesn't want to defend the belt, hence the stripping of him. But as I said, it does seem very, very, very strange that the IBF would strip Terence Crawford so soon after winning that belt. So the only thing I can think of is that Terence Crawford has informed them he doesn't want the belt or doesn't want to defend against Ennis for that belt. Now, you're probably asking, well, why haven't the other sanctioning bodies followed suit? Well, he might just, they all operate differently. Let's face it, WBC have allowed Jamal Charlo not to defend his WBC middleweight title in over 3 years. So it's just fascinating. But maybe the mandatory challenges, Crawford hasn't given an answer one way or the other, hence why they've allowed him to keep the belt. But in this case, what I would guess is that Ennis has been thrown up by the IBF as a mandatory challenger, and you have to give us a timeline, and Crawford, of course, can't do that, so he has relinquished that belt. And who knows, maybe the undisputed title doesn't really mean that much to him if he's got plans to move up in weight within the next 12 months anyway, so we'll keep an eye on that one. Last weekend, Joe Cordina defended his IBF super featherweight title with a 12-round decision over Edward Vasquez. That was in Monte Carlo. The score was 116-112 times 2 and 114-114. Cordina now 16-0. Vasquez dropped to 15-1. Big fight night coming up next week that we'll cover a little bit more on various shows on this channel. Shakur Stevenson will fight for the vacant version of the WBC lightweight title. I'm not quite sure whether it's a silver version or a vacant title or an interim title. Who knows these days? 20-0 against Edwin De Los Santos. That will be a big card at the T-Mobile Arena with Emmanuel Navarrete on the undercard against Robson Conceição. Now, that's on in America, Thursday, November 16th. It's to coincide with the Formula One Grand Prix over there. It will be on TV, main event here in Australia on Friday morning. Catch it live. You will have to pay for it. It's $29.95. So jump on the app, main event or KO on Friday, November 16th. Another fight that's been sort of raised that really made me raise my eyebrows, I will say, is Andre Berto and Robert Guerrero have been penciled in to fight on November 25 on the Benavides Andrade undercard. Now, these two fought about 11 years ago, I think it was. Guerrero won that decision. Ultimately got the fight with Floyd Mayweather after that. Berto, of course, will get an opportunity in 2015. But Berto, 32-5. Guerrero, 37-6-1. Both of these fighters have seen a lot better days, I will say. I'm not quite sure the logic behind putting this fight on that card. Berto hasn't fought since 2018 when he won a 12-round decision over Devin Alexander. And Guerrero, I think it's been a couple of years for him since he's fought as well over Victor Ortiz. He won that 10-round decision. And the other fight on that card of note, Jamal Charlo, the, as mentioned before, WBC middleweight champion, will fight Jose Benavides Jr. on that card, but not for the belt. Will be at super middleweight. We still don't know when he's going to defend that belt. We're approaching 1,000 days since he's defended that belt. So, yeah, it's hard to sort of get your head around, is it? Uh, the fight that's going to end the Showtime presence in boxing looks like going a little bit of a fizzer. David Morrell looks like fighting Sina Agbeko on December 16 in the final Showtime event ever. I would have thought they would have come up with a little bit better one to finish their time in boxing. Morrell 9-0, great young prospect, but still unproven. Agbeko's 28-2. So as I said, a little bit of a sour note to go out on, but it is what it is. They're finishing up at the end of 2023, and I suppose this just happens to be the last fight on the last show. So I'm going to miss it, just like I did with HBO. Let's hope someone steps into the breach, or the DAZNs of the world can step up the game and give us some good quality the broadcasts like Showtime and HBO have done in the past. One fight that's been put off, now it looks like it might be back on. Deontay Wilder and Andy Ruiz. Now, the fight's been on, off a few times. Looks like it could happen in January or February of 2024. Both of these very inactive. Wilder 43-2-1, of course, the former WBC heavyweight champion. Andy Ruiz 35-2, the former WBA, WBO, IBF champion. 3 fights in 4 years, not active enough. But there is talk. Both of these fighters have had fights fall over, not just against each other, but other fighters in the division. So, as I said, looks like they might possibly finally get together in centre ring in early 2024. Now, one last thing, we always like to finish with a bit of a joke of the week. This is a good one. Richard Regpor, who was scheduled or offered the fight against Jai Apataya for the IBF World Cruiserweight title. He declined that fight. He opted out of it, and his promoters instead have opted to fight very little known Frenchman Dylan Bregion, 13-4-1 in a prelim fight on the card in Wolverhampton, UK on the 18th of November. So he's given up a guaranteed world title fight with Jai Apataya to fight a little-known Frenchman on a little-known card on the undercard. So I don't get it with some of these fighters. I know he's 16-0, he wants to preserve that record, but I just don't get the fighters of today where they would willingly give up a guaranteed world title fight to fight a nobody on an undercard of a nothing fight card. So anyway, there you go. There's all the happenings this week ahead of the weekend. Enjoy your boxing, have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.